This is a game changer. Stay tuned. Hey guys, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Michael and I am the woodworker for MK Designs. And yeah, the RS1000 from Nextwave, the Shark RS1000 Pro from Nextwave is a total game changer. When I was out in Vegas at the AWFS Fair, I spent a lot of time with the guys from Nextwave, and they were showing this off as one of the new innovations, and they were up for an award for it, and I think they came in second or third, I don't remember. The other one that beat them out was pretty cool. But at any rate, they showed this off to me a lot, and they showed me a lot of the capabilities, a lot of the functions of it. And honestly, the biggest reason I wanted to get one of these isn't about all the built-in stuff. I mean, yeah, that's all great, and I'm going to get to that. I'm going to demonstrate that, a lot of that to you in other videos. But in this video, I wanted to go over what really makes it stand out for me. Like I said, it's a complete game changer because, hey, all right, so this is my old router table. Yeah, let me move away so you can see it. This is my old router table, and it's used to scare the living crap out of me, and it still does. Mostly because it's small, and I have trouble getting everything squared just right, and stuff, things along those lines. That is one fear that the RS1000 takes out. First of all, I created a bigger table. You kind of need a bigger table for the size of the fence that you get, so you need at least a longer table, if not a deeper table. But you really need a deeper table as well, because when you're setting this up in the instructions, it actually says ideally you want the center of your bit to be at least 12 inches from the back of your table, so that you have 6 inches, minimum of 6 inches of fence movement between the fence and the blade, or the bit. Blade bit, you know, you get what I'm saying. But at any rate, so I made a bigger table for it, and the fence, when you install it, as long as you line up the fence movement system correctly to your table, it is always square to your bit or perpendicular to the bit. And that's one issue that a lot of these other tables, including the more expensive ones, I mean, this is on the low end, but some of the more expensive ones, you still have that issue of having the fence perfectly perpendicular to the bit, and that eliminates that issue. The other thing is being able to control everything and make sure it's tightened down and all of that. Because this uses CNC type technology, once you engage that motor, you cannot move this fence without using the pendant. When you turn it off, you can move it back and forth, but once you have the motor engaged, you cannot move that fence. So bumping into it and having it knock out of alignment, all that's gone. The other thing is getting it exactly where you want it. Not just the fence, but the bit height as well. A lot of you have those little Wixie gauges. I have one as well. I meant to pull it out for this, and I didn't. But you have those Wixie gauges. You know what? Let me pause the video and grab it for you real quick. Okay, so this is a little gauge I'm talking about. It's a Wixie gauge. It's just a little piece of plastic. It's got 2 magnets on the bottom, and you can move this up and down after you set 0. One of the issues that I've had with this, it does a really good job when it's dialed in. And the way this works is you place it on your table and you raise your bit, and until the digital readout reads what you want the bit to be, the height you want the bit to be at, and then you lock everything down and you should be good to go. One of the issues that I have with this is if I set my height and I set it down, but I set it down wrong, like set it face down or something like that, it presses on the hold the 0 button and it zeroes itself out. I've also had it zero itself out without me doing that. So I may have gotten a bad one, but this is like the second one I've had and they both did it. So I'm not positive, I'm not completely convinced that that's not the issue, but I'm definitely not convinced that it isn't the issue, or is the issue. Yeah, you know what I mean. But at any rate, and they're supposed to be highly accurate, and I believe it is when it's dialed in right. But again, it moves on me. And I know that part of the problem with this one is it wasn't a router lift. I just raised the router up to get the bit where I need it to be. Using the adjustments on the router, because this doesn't have a router motor in it. It actually has the full router. And I don't know if you can see that. No, you can't see that. But it's got my full router in it. It's not just the motor. And yes, it's an old rigid router that I have in this one. I got a Bosch in the table for the RS1000. But the big, like, again, trying to get the bit to the exact height that you want, and then you change bits, you have to readjust everything, blah, 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 blah. That eliminates that. The RS1000 eliminates that. Because essentially you use this little touch plate. You use this little touch plate similar to what you use on a CNC to zero out your Z height on your CNC. The little magnet here goes on your bit, and you lay the plate on your table with your bit below the table, and you slowly raise, you tell it to sync, or to calibrate it, and it comes up, and as soon as the bit touches this plate, it backs off and says, do you want to accept these settings? You accept these settings, and now your bit, the top of your bit is perfectly flush with the top of your table. And that's what you want. So now you have your zero basis. And then from there, you want to raise the bit. You want the bit to be 1/4 inch above the table. You raise it up 1/4 inch, and it goes exactly 1/4 inch. There's no guesswork or anything like that. As long as you know exactly where you want it, it moves. And you can actually free move it to get it to a height. If you mark a line on your board and you want it to come up to that height, you can bring it up to that height, get it flush, and it's set. You don't have to lock anything in, none of that. It holds it perfectly, whatever height you've set it at, it holds it perfectly there. So now getting back into the measurement, I know a lot of you have these. They're the little brass height gauges. I actually use these on this one to set my fence, the distance from the bit for my fence. And they're supposed to be accurate, but I found that they're really not. Not to mention the fact that, getting back to the previous thing, if I don't tighten these things down back here completely, I go to start running. You know how the bit will actually pull the piece to the back of the router table. It can actually pull this fence back and get it completely out of alignment, and then I'm no longer 1/4 inch. I'm further than 1/4 inch. So that eliminates, the RS1000 eliminates that as well. Those are my biggest things. My second biggest thing is repeatability, and I'm going to demonstrate that here in a moment. But you know how you're making some things, and let's say you want to run a dado through 15 different pieces. But the data you want to run is a little deeper than you're comfortable making one pass for. Okay, so that means you have to raise your bit to a small height, run each piece over that, then you raise your bit again, then run each piece over that again, and so forth and so on. This eliminates that, and I'm going to demonstrate that here in just a moment. Okay, so to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I make these things. These are quilt tapestry hangers, wall hangers. And they've got the hangers back here, you can see, so you can hang them on the wall. And with these, I run a groove through them. And what that groove is for is the binding on the quilts or the edges of the tapestry. You don't want to get that bunched up whenever you're hanging it on something. So what that groove does is it gives space for the binding to fall into, so that it doesn't crimp it and completely mess it up, or tear it even. It can do that. And then when you crimp it together, you put screws through here to crimp it all together, it hangs flat. Instead of being bounced out to one side or back or whatever, it hangs straight down like it should. So in order to cut that, I have to set my fence on my router table to 1/4 inch, and that's where this lip comes in right here. But I have to set the fence at 1/4 inch at the full height of the bit. And so I pulled the bit up to the height that I wanted at for the depth of this cut, and set my fence to 1/4 inch, and then I bring my router bit back down and try to raise it back up. And again, if you don't have the exact same setting the first time as you do the second time that you get the bit to the full height, this bit, or this piece right here, could very well wind up being greater than or less than the 1/4 inch that I'm looking for. And as a matter of fact, I believe this one is just under 1/4 inch, because my fence moved on me a little bit and I wasn't able to get it exactly where I wanted, the bit exactly where I wanted it to be. So let me demonstrate what I mean by this eliminates a lot of that issue. Okay, so just to get started on this, I'm going to demonstrate what I was talking about using the plate and getting everything calibrated. So you put your little magnet on your bit. If you can't put it anywhere on the bit, you can put it down on the collet, but it's better if you have it touching the bit. Same with the CNC. And then you come in to the apps over here, and I'm gonna see if I can do this while you guys can see it. And then I hit apps, and then I hit touch plate calibration. I tap that, tap press to run, and then run fence calibration or run bit calibration. You put in your bit diameter, and that's one thing you need to remember, especially for the fence. In order to get it accurately exactly where you want it, you want to make sure your bit diameter is in here. And you can change this from inches to millimeters in any other settings and things. And so I want to run the bit calibration first. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that the height of my bit, this is the bit that I use to cut those grooves, and I want to make sure that the height of my bit is 1/4 inch above the table before I run the fence calibration, because that is going to be the depth of my cut for the grooves. And this bit curves over, so pulling it all the way up and running the fence against it that way, I'm not going to get the 1/4 inch that I'm looking for. I'm going to get a little bit less or a little bit more depending on the bit that you're using. If you have a straight bit in here, then it doesn't matter. But with a curved bit like this, it does. So I'm going to run that first. So run bit calibration, press to run. And this app requires the touch plate accessory. Make sure it is plugged in. You plug it into the side of the pendant here. Tap OK. And here it allows you to verify that your bit diameter is correct and that you don't need to make any other changes, moving the fence back out of the way or anything like that. If you do that, if you need to do that, you just press controls here and it brings up the controls to be able to move the fence and the bit. Then you just press OK. And then it wants to confirm that the touch plate is connected properly. So you'll take the touch plate and just touch it to the bit with the magnet. And as you can see, it turns red. And then you just tap OK, and it will start moving the bit. You need to make sure this is in place. And as soon as it touches that touch plate, accept these results, OK. And then if you come out here, you go into your settings for your bit, and you tell it to move to 0. It will move the bit to where it's perfectly 0. The top of the bit is perfectly aligned with the top of the table. That's your 0 point. So now with that done, I am going to remove this for a moment, and I'm going to put my insert on. Tighten it down. Then I'm going to raise my bit to 0.25, 1/4 inch. All right, that's the depth of the cut that I want for this groove. I'm going to take the magnet and I'm going to put it back on here. And then you're going to go through the same steps again, but this time for the fence. So I come in here to apps, touch plate calibration, press to run, run fence calibration this time. Press to run, and it does the exact same, it says the exact same things as before. Okay, and it gives you a chance to move everything where you need it to. And then you want to take your plate and you want to put it back here on your fence. Make sure it's pressed all the way up against the fence, press OK, touch it, turns red, and then you press OK and it moves the fence. And it moves it slowly. You can speed this up or slow it down, whatever you need to do. Probably should have moved the fence a little closer before I started this because it won't take as long. But once it touches the bit, it will stop, move back, and ask me if I want to accept these results. Right there. Do I want to accept these results? Yes. Okay. And then if I come back over here, remove this, and I move the fence to 0, it will move and just barely touch the edge of the bit. So now I have everything set to 0, because if I move the bit back to 0, it goes back to 0 as well. And if I turn it off at this point, this will be my 0 when I come back to it. So if I have multiples to do and I can't get them all done in one day, I just move everything back to 0, and I'm good to go. So now, to get that 1/4 inch gap, I just tap here for the fence, 0.25, move. It moves back 1/4 inch back, and I'm ready to go. There are a couple other things I need to do, but I'm ready to go. I can raise my bit. So let's say I didn't want to take the whole 1/4 inch at once. I can raise my bit to 1/8 of an inch. So let's do it in 2 passes, 0.125, move. It moves the bit at 1/8 of an inch up. I run it through, then I come over and I tap 0.25, move, and I make my final pass. And I'm done. One of the things that it's going to speed up on is when you're doing multiples of these. So just for example, I'll just grab this piece of 2x4 here. All right, so we've got this, all right? So I'm wanting to run the groove on this. So let's say I have multiples of these. Well, as I said, you have to come through and you have to make your first pass, then take your next piece, use this piece of melamine, run it, so forth and so on, and then you'll raise the bit again, and you'll do it all again. So it's going to take time for you to dial it back into the next height. It doesn't take long. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't take long, especially once you get used to using one of these, but it does take time. So with this, I can actually do one piece at a time. So I can sit here and I can tell it to raise 1/8 of an inch, get it raised 1/8 of an inch, turn the router on, run it across, raise 1/4 inch, run that one across, and I can take this one and put it to the side and start on the next one. I just move back to 1/8 of an inch, run it, 1/4 inch, run it. I can get through it a lot faster that way because I'm not having to stop, turn off the router, adjust everything. Yeah, that is one of the biggest advantages to this that I can see. For me anyway, that's one of the biggest advantages because it's going to save me time. It does have apps and things of that nature inside the pendant to be able to do different things like dovetails and finger joints and all kinds of things. But at any rate, so that's the biggest advantage to me for this thing, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to get one, because I do make a lot of these things, and this is going to save me so much time in production. As a matter of fact, I got a new drill press to help save time, so why wouldn't I invest in something like this if it's going to help me save time as well? So as I said, there are a lot of features in this, and I'm going to be creating some stuff with this thing for you guys. I'm going to be doing videos on a box joint, dovetail joints. The apps and stuff that are in this, they are making changes to it. They're adding things to it. They are changing things around a bit, and they're constantly making improvements to this through the firmware updates. And one of the advantages that I've seen to this, as you can see, I made my table myself for this thing, and I do not have a standard miter slot here. There's a reason for that. Let me show you. All right, so I didn't put a standard miter slot on this because I don't need it, and I'll explain that in just a second, but I do have a need for a T-track. So I put a T-track in here, and the reason I need a T-track is for like feather boards. When I'm making these quilt hangers, I will actually use feather boards. I use one here to push down and a couple here to push up against the fence to make sure that my board stays firm in there. So I needed the T-slot to run my feather boards in. So that's why I have a T-slot there. But the reason I don't need a miter slot is because I have this. And I'm sure you've seen this as well. This is one of the accessories that you can get for the RS1000. And it literally goes on and off like this. It's very simple. You get these unscrewed and then you place it on and you just tighten it back down. and you've got your miter. You've got your miter gauge. The advantage to this versus this. So you're making a box joint. Let's go with that. I've got one over here that I started to make the other day, but it blew out on me. But we'll use that as an example. So you're making a box joint. Okay, on a standard router table, you would have your miter over here, and you would run it across. Then you would move your fence back, you move your board back, move your fence back, move your board over, so forth and so on. With it being attached to the fence, you can literally take your board and clamp it down. Get a little hold down in here, and you can clamp your board to your miter gauge, like so. Make your first pass. Move your fence back. When you move the fence back, it moves the board with it. Make your next pass, so forth and so on. And it will quite literally move it for you. You do not have to move this. You do not have to worry about making sure everything's lined up, because once you get it pressed against that fence the way you need it, you're good to go. You don't have to do anything else. The fence does all the work. You just run it through the bit. That's all you do. I love that. Okay, so now I happen to have a custom piece that I'm making one of the quilt hangers for, so I'm going to show you how this is going to work. So how this actually works. I'm going to show you it in action, so to speak. So, okay, so I've got my feather boards in place, and I'm going to come over, and I've already got my fence moved back to the 1/4 inch that I want. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to raise the bit to 1/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to turn on the router and I'm going to make my first pass. And after I make the first pass, you'll see that I don't even have to turn the router off. I just go back to the pendant and I raise it to the full 1/4 inch height that I want, and I run my second pass and I'm done. And I'm not sure why it doesn't have any sound. The mic was plugged in. I didn't know until I went to edit the video. So sorry about that. Okay, so hopefully now you can see why I call it a game changer, because it makes this stuff so much simpler, so much more straightforward, and so much safer. I didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation running that board over, no nerves or anything, because I knew everything was exactly where I wanted it to be, exactly where I expected it to be, and I wasn't worried about something moving on me. As long as you have that bit tightened down, nothing's going to move once you have it set. And yeah, this thing has so many cool features built into it, and they're constantly making changes to it. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys exactly what this thing is capable of. It's some of it's going to amaze you, some of it's going to astound you. And me personally, it's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to diving into it and showing you exactly what all this has. So be on the lookout for those videos. I also do have some regular woodworking videos coming out. I'm not sure when they're going to come out, but I do have some coming out. So keep an eye out for those. And yeah, until next time, guys, happy creating.